Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and on my show today we have Lynn Levine. Lynn has introduced and inspired thousands of people to the wide world of nature through her interpretive trails, wildlife tracking, and curriculums for environmental citizenship. And she's also written books for kids and adults about various things in nature. Lynn was also the first female consulting forester in the Northeast back in the 1970s, and currently she's developing a new project that takes folks outdoors in a whole new way. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It's wonderful to have you on the show.
Yes.
We've been trying to get you on for a while, and it's hard to know what season is good for you. But
This is perfect.
This is great. And I just want to point out that we've imported these wonderful trees as a backdrop for you as a forester.
That's great.
And luckily it's not between two ferns, although that would be in keeping with your latest book.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
which we will get to.
Yeah.
You went from Brooklyn to Brattleboro, a little trail of adventures. What was your path here?
I grew up in Brooklyn, and I went to Brooklyn College. So if you were a woman in Brooklyn and you were Jewish, and also you had to become an elementary school teacher.
Huh.
That was it. No other choice.
Wow.
And then, so I went there for schooling, and then my junior year in college, I went camping. Once I went with my boyfriend at the time, and then I went by myself. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I went out, people helped me in this community of people that were camping
Mhm.
too, on the rocks in New Paltz.
New Paltz.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
New Paltz, yeah. And so I was camping and liking being with people, and towards the end of my stay there, I was walking with this guy that I sort of had a crush on, and I looked down at a plant, and he said, "That's a sassafras," and I said, "I didn't know that trees had names."
Yes, incredible, right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
that was the first wake-up call,
Yeah.
and then I became completely impassioned by trees.
Really. Lynn, you come back from that camping trip, you go back into the world of education, and at that time, around that age, your early 20s, did you have any champions or any mentors in your life?
Yes, I did, and
You did.
I became a more and more important mentor. Her name was Helen Hafner,
Uh-huh.
and how she became she was teaching a mental health course for educators, and that's how I met her. And then she helped me get my first job,
Mm-hmm.
which was on Long Island, and in a school that had kids that had mental health issues. I didn't even know that they did. I was just hired to do it, and so Helen got me there, and then when I was there, I found out that I got really depressed because I had no idea how to teach these kids.
Ah.
I was lost.
Uh-huh.
So I wound up leaving within 1 month
Wow.
and went back home,
Mm-hmm.
stayed with my parents, and then Helen picked me up again, and she helped me take this test, which was a test on your abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And what it turned out was that I was really creative, was what the test came out back,
Mhm.
and it was like, oh, okay, that's really neat. And then she was able to get me the next new job out of teaching at the Environmental Defense Fund, which was just started up.
Oh, so it was 70-something.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was in the early 70s.
And that was
yeah.
your first job.
Yeah.
And just to go back to the mental health piece again, like you recognized in yourself, she helped you to find a place that would recognize in yourself that you were dealing with this as well.
Correct. I knew it was in my family. I
Yeah.
had inherited
Mm.
this issue.
Mm-hmm.
But she was there in terms of supporting me when I was having a hard time, and
Mhm.
she didn't turn her back. She was
Right.
like, here I am.
Yes, yes.
I'm there for you.
Yep, and helped you through that as well. and
Right.
recognition of that and treatment.
Yes,
ultimately, yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lucky thing, huh?
Yeah.
And that was early years
Yes.
for that and for the recognition of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then after college, somehow you got to Brattleboro. It wasn't quite a dart and a dartboard, but it was kind of close, right?
It was exactly that. You nailed it. So I worked for the Environmental Defense Fund as a grant writer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized I didn't just want to be in an office in New York City. I really wanted to go outside and be my camping experience. And so I decided I would go somewhere in New England, basically in Vermont. I had been skiing in Vermont. So I took a map of Vermont, like you were saying, and I went, and it ended up in Brattleboro.
Oh my gosh. That's a good story.
It's great. It's great. But it's true. That's what's even crazier. And then, everyone has a good story. And then when I arrived, so I wound up taking a bus to Brattleboro. And when I arrived here, I looked up and there was this mountain. And I felt like Heidi, and I was home. So, and then I found out it was in New Hampshire, and it wasn't even in Brattleboro.
One does to get, right.
One does to get.
We think of it as ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we look at it.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
You're right. And the Sokoco Indians think of it definitely as theirs
That's
because
right.
they owned it first.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So you had a bunch of various odd jobs for a while, and what happened then? How did you get back into your connection with nature?
Well, what happened was that I decided that I wanted to do something. I had been studying trees ever since I found out about that sassafras trees. And so I wanted to be with the trees. I didn't know what to do. But when I was back at that camping spot, it was during the winter, and I was walking without my shoes on. When I went back to New Paltz, I was walking out with my shoes, and these people went by and they said, "Are you a wood nymph?"
A wood nymph.
And I was, wow, that sounds pretty cool. And then I told them that I had fallen in love with trees. And so then they told me I could be a forester or I can work in an arboretum. Those were choices. I never even knew what being a forester was. So when I was in Brattleboro and I had given up teaching, I decided I didn't really like doing that in that format. I basically decided to go to forestry school, and I applied. And they didn't let me into the master's program because I was too environmental oriented. And forestry at that point was quite industrial based.
Right.
So they let me into the bachelor's program. I had no idea it had anything to do with cutting trees. I just loved trees. I wanted to learn more about it. And then I found out when I was there that in fact it had a really wonderful, it had a future for me in terms of I could become a forester and make my own business.
Wow. Which you did.
Yes.
And which you had for over 40 years.
It's true.
Just selling it last year, the year before?
Yeah, last year, yeah. And I almost feel it's not even selling it so much as that I gave it to the next wonderful person, Andrew Morrison, who believes what I believe.
Yes.
And every one of my clients, of which I had 150 of them at that point, just as he meets them, he loves them.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry. I don't get phone calls.
Yeah, that's great.
Like,
that's good.
who should be? Who should be? That it doesn't happen.
That's not
It's a joy.
Yeah, that's.
And he's a joy. And he can call me anytime, and I'm his mentor, and just continue.
Yeah, just back when you were, because you did get your master's at UMass. Were there any other women in the program?
Yeah, in the master's program, no.
No.
Not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, looking back, seeing that this was 70s, not even mid 70s yet, right, or right around there, to realize that you were the only woman doing forestry and that you built this business that was a whole career. So let's talk about more of the career things that you did as well, because you've done so many things. And one of the themes that runs through everything that you do, whether it's the tracking or the teaching or the writing or whatever, you've talked about this, protecting the integrity of the forest. Can you talk for a minute about that?
Certainly. So there's two different ways that I approach this. One is education of children, adults, and taking them into the woods. And the other is my forestry principles as a forester, and being concerned with the long term of what's going to happen in the forest. So while I'm making changes in it, that I'm doing it in a gentle way, and it's with what as it's growing, I'm working with it, not making this big changes. So that's who turned to me as clients, or people that had the similar philosophy. So I didn't have clients that wanted to make the most money. They went somewhere else. Wasn't me.
They got sorted, right? Like the Harry Potter sorting hat.
Yes, yes. I had a lot of women clients, but also just those that believed, as I believe, found me.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, one of the things that I remember most is when you came out with your tracking guide, and I think it was groundbreaking. I'm not sure. Correct me, but Lynn had a spiral-bound tracking guide. It was about this big, and it was the spirals at the top, and it was life-size scat and tracks, so you could take it out in your backyard and actually compare it. It was amazing, and that was early 2000s somewhere.
Right, and it came about because of teaching teachers. Because we came out, Martha and I, the illustrator.
Yes, Martha Mitchell.
Martha
right?
Mitchell, yes. Went to teach in Westminster, and we made this mock-up of this book of tracks, life size and scat life size, and we brought it to the teachers, and they were like, oh my God, this is so great. And because of that, we decided to make the book.
Yes.
It took a few years, but it was their excitement.
And you've got almost every species in the Northeast in that book, is that right?
Correct, and it is sold around the country. So we've sold more than 21,000 copies, which is...
And you also have a pocket guide, so you can put it in your back pocket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That came out a few years later. Yeah.
They're both great. And you've done.
And they're also both waterproof. So
yes.
That's the other thing that gets people excited. It says it on the cover, life-size, waterproof. You know, it says, but people don't actually get it. They get excited when they feel the book, and then they realize it's waterproof.
It's so great, yes, because a lot of the tracking is in winter.
Yes.
Yeah. You've created a lot of relationships, whether it's with whoever's in your audience or the students that might be, really working with you that way, and loggers and other forest people as well.
Yes. So, so to begin with, since I was the first woman forester, they had a lot of the loggers had a lot of negative things to say about this woman that came in and was going to oversee their work.
That's right, because you were a consulting forester.
As consulting, and I was overseeing what they did. So I got this reputation that was like, she is really, really tough, and my friends were like, what? But it worked in terms of the working relationship. And over time, I was able to really engage and have these wonderful relationships with loggers, because it was a different world, different economics, different political, but we met in terms of the love of the forest.
That's so great.
And one of my wonderful stories is one of the loggers I worked with, third generation, Calvin Powling Jr. His father, who was 89 when he was still logging, and when I'd come to the site to visit, he'd give me a little peck on the cheek. See, I was always a little different no matter what.
That's right.
And so I visited him in the hospital when he got sick just before his 90th birthday. And I brought with me a log truck that I had inscribed in it the name of their company.
Oh, like a little small one?
Yeah, like a wooden one, and I had painted on their name, Calvin Powling Jr. Logging, and I gave it to him, and he was just, in bed at Grace Cottage, and then he died pretty soon after.
Oh wow! Oh, how great that you got to see him.
And you got to see him.
Yeah.
But then when they took the log truck and put it in his casket.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. That's a
more,
great story.
more can I say?
Yeah, I know.
We're
That's
still
the
good
whole
friends. Yeah.
That's the whole thing right there.
Yeah.
You've done a lot with working with kids in the classroom, but out of the classroom. And at some point, you, I don't know if you were asked to develop a natural history curriculum for an environmental citizenship.
I approached Vermont Institute of Natural Science and said, isn't this a really neat idea? And they bought it. And it became much bigger. I was just, bobcats was the focus of mine, and then it became vernal pools and salmon, and became much, much bigger. I didn't do all of the curriculums, just the two of them. But it taps my creativity, which I really like.
Yes, right. So you enjoyed doing the curriculum. Yes,
I really love it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Lynn, having gone to school for teaching and getting a degree in teaching, obviously, even though people told you that was where you were going to end up, you have ended up doing a lot of, I wouldn't even call it teaching, but it's certainly informing people and letting people understand something in a different way. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's really exciting. This, for me, that I came upon this. I actually started a PhD program, and this is what I learned from it. This style of teaching that you say, what do you see? And then people tell you. So I don't go to an oak tree and say, this is an oak tree. I say, what do you see? And then people will say, oh, I see the lines go up and down, or it's red, and then I'll tell them the name. But then they've walked away with their own view.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking them on a workshop that they have now seen 20 different flowers, and they're not going to remember any one of them. Instead, maybe they've learned 5 trees because they've connected with the tree themselves. The potato chip, they can see it themselves. I don't have to say it.
Yeah. That's so simple and so profound, right?
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it's so exciting. And I'm teaching teachers. So I'm going to be working with I was supposed to be working with academy school teachers to teach them the way of doing this. So.
It's so cool. You've got such a great balance, between inside and outside, and using your mind, using your heart, using your arms and legs, and
It's true.
and you've also written books. I believe after the tracking book, you wrote a book for kids.
Snow Secrets, yeah. And I had a mission there too. It's about 2 girls who go tracking with this Abenaki woman. And good things happen and bad things happen. In fact, I went to Dummerston School, and they read the story after the first draft of it, and they said, does that have to happen? Does the deer have to die in your story? It's like, yeah, hard things happen in nature too. So, but it's 2 girls that went out that have different learning styles. One more book reading, and one more just learning from the environment. And so it was sharing, yes, girls, you can get out there and you can have different styles of learning and enjoy the woods.
Is it time yet?
Yes.
About vernal pools and the spotted salamander.
Yeah, so my husband and I for years have been crossing salamanders, and we still do.
You do?
On the East-West Road, there's a spot there's vernal pool on one side, and we just love it to pick up that little salamander and then help it cross. It's just, it's wonderful, and just put it on its way. And so then I decided I wanted kids to have more of an opportunity to see that they could do that and they could make a difference.
Yeah. Probably a lot of people who don't live in Vermont don't know about the salamander crossings that we have in the springtime. Yes.
Really
here in Vermont, we actually help salamanders cross the road in the springtime. It's a true fact, folks.
And then the other point of that story was the character in there, the salamander's Spot, is going around and asking everyone, is it time? Is it time? Is it time? And then he doesn't know when it's actually going to happen. But inside him, there's a little voice inside him that says, I can do it. I will do it. And that's my voice of making myself healthy over the years. Mental health.
Yes. Yeah.
It's fun to see kids read it. Oh my gosh, when
Yes.
people, any of the books, when they come up and they say, "I've used your book," it's just so exciting.
Yes.
And the hysterical one is the fern book. When people say to me, "I look at a fern and I think of you," and I'm like, wow, I'm getting thought of a lot.
Yes, there are a lot of ferns.
There's a lot of ferns.
There are a lot of ferns, yes, and that's your latest book, Identifying Ferns. And one thing that's great about it is that it's a really nice little pocket size, because I know walking the roads, which many of us are doing now more than ever, there are lots of different kinds of ferns. How did you choose that to do a book about?
I fell in love with one specific species, the maidenhair fern,
Mm-hmm.
because the maidenhair fern is one that catches my breath. It lets you know that the trees are doing really well. It's a good site for growing, because they grow where it's very calcium rich, not carbon, calcium rich.
Aha.
And that's where the trees grow the best, the tallest. So trees they grow wider based on how much light they get,
Mm-hmm.
but for a given age, they grow taller the better the site that they're on. So that just was like, I get excited every time I did it. And then I would try to use the other fern books to help me in ferns, and it was like, no, I couldn't do it. So I spent 4 years trying to figure out how to make it easy.
So you did a lot of research on all the different kinds of ferns in the area.
Right.
And is this
And just my approach, how to do it so that it's visual rather than it's not a key that you say yes or no.
Yes.
It's just
right.
visual.
Yeah, that's another asset of being a good teacher, is knowing how people learn best, and I think the visual component, especially for the things, scat without a visual is not going to help you, right? Unless you see the animal. Well, that kind of also brings us to your latest project, right?
Yes.
Yeah, let's hear about this latest project.
So I was taking a course at Keene State College. They offer a program for people over 60 or those that have disabilities on Fridays. And so it was a Zoom class, and it was a writing class. I'd never taken a writing class before. It was super exciting.
Oh.
And so I wrote about this new project I had of, instead of taking people out just to learn trees and learn ferns or whatever, it's called Just Wandering Through the Woods. And there was a woman in the class who had ALS,
Mm-hmm.
and in the little chat function she wrote, "Can you take me virtually out into the woods?" And I went, whoa.
Light bulb.
Whoa, exactly. And I decided to take on she was just this wonderful, she still is this wonderful woman. We speak to each other through the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a challenge, and I really like challenges, because the books, the tracking books and everything, I was the designer.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew how to use technical kinds of computer stuff.
Yes, that's helpful.
And then, so when she brought up this topic, I was sort of that light bulb of, all those people that never went on my workshops, that I could never take them out of the woods. How could I now have figured out a way that I could reach them, because this woman, Ellen, made a suggestion.
Yes.
And then
One idea, right? Yeah.
So
And so
great.
for now, Lynn, during the pandemic, it's an amazing tool to have. And this is called Woodland Wanderings with Lynn Levine. You have your own YouTube station,
Right.
which is very cool.
That's
We'll have the information at the end of the show. But that is an amazing tool for kids, and you take people right out, and it could be a rock, it can be a fern, it can be moss, which is another one of your interests, I know. Yeah, I think there'll be a book on that at some point.
I don't know.
Oh, we don't know. But anyway, I think that it's a very interesting new venture.
From hospice, Susan wrote to me and said,
Susan Paris.
Susan
Yeah.
Paris in
Mhm.
hospice, I sent her a link to it, and she then spread the word to the other people that work with the clients.
Mhm.
And then they had a meeting, and one of the supervisors came in and said, I have to tell you this story. This woman that I'm working with, who's depressed, who is anxious, she started looking at these videos and she looks at them over and over again.
Oh, wow. Yes.
So just making a difference for now 2 people that really mattered. And then this other friend of mine who has ALS also wrote to me and said, and they also made critiques, like how to make it better.
That's great.
They're totally invested in it.
Well, you know, yes, it's fabulous, and I think that this can expand. These are like 2 4-minute little wanderings.
They're just 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, yes. And it just, what's great about it is again, it's creative.
Yeah, right.
I never know exactly what I'm going to see. The difference is that I have to maybe record it many times so that I don't say the wrong word that I'm trying to say.
But you can do that.
But I can do that. I can just go in again and again.
Yeah.
So, and it was my son-in-law who said, make a YouTube channel. So it was because...
Oh, great. That's great, yes, because I think, you know, right now, I'm not sure when the show's going to air, but many people are scrambling, trying to figure out what's going to happen for the school year.
Yes.
And to have this kind of thing available for kids. And the thing that's great is that you do feel like, it's like, you know, the beauty of Zoom and all the virtual stuff is you do feel a connection and you do feel that.
Right.
You know, that you are part of outside.
Right.
Yeah.
And hopefully as people get more and more, they get connected to me.
That's right.
And they can sign up so that they subscribe is what it's called.
That's a great idea,
so,
yes.
So that's what you do, and then it lets you know somehow that there's a new one out.
Yeah, that's magic. For many of us during this time, nature, people are going out in nature more, people are walking more, people are being able to connect by doing that. And could you talk a little bit about nature as solace?
Well, for me, what is the most important is that my mind can be blah, 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 and just go on. And then I go outside and the light hits a leaf in a certain way and I forget everything else. I'm just present. So now I don't just wait for that to happen. I can make that happen. I can go outside purposefully and say, I'm just going to see what I see. This is not videoing it or anything. Just going outside and then anything. Every time there's something that you can see, a root coming out in a different way, the bend in the tree, the track, looking at the little squirrel track and just the details of it. All of that just make me stop.
Yeah.
And then I connect.
Yeah, it's a treasure.
It is. That's what nature is for me.
Yeah. Those of us in Vermont who are able to take part of that are realizing how lucky we are to be in this state for all of those things, and our community as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. Lynn, thank you so much.
You are welcome. This has been a total pleasure.
It has been really fun. Thank you. Really, I love the fact that you finally got on the show and we got to talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for being with us today. We took a little woodland walk here in the studio. Thanks to Lynn Levine. We are a weekly show. Tune in again next week, and we will have someone else from the area, from our community, on to talk about who they are and what they do. Thank you.